Welcome to RebeccaVanetta.com and our first YouTube presentation. I took my hat off because he said he wouldn't let us do the interview if I had my hat on.
I think we both agree it's better with his hat on.
Do you want the hat on?
No.
Really?
No, he wants to keep this professional.
Okay. All right.
So, we're not ditching our podcast, but we are moving on to revealing ourselves on YouTube.
And can I just mention something?
Go ahead.
I'm very shocked at the responses I got about peeing in a pool. More yeses than no. Surprising.
More yeses than no, as I promised you.
And I'm not going to invite any of them to my pool party.
So
you know. Sorry.
Today, we don't have a pool, so that's fine. Today we are going to, we're going to do our very first serious interview. Not that Adam was not serious, but we're going to speak with Stewart today. And Stewart is a friend of the family, and he will not be revealing himself.
His stepdad.
Is he allowed, is that cool? Okay,
That's cool.
We're allowed to talk. He's my stepdad, and that's his left shoulder.
Like wave if you want.
Stewart was diagnosed with cancer originally in
The first time in 2010, but it
2010.
metastasized in 2012.
In 2012. And, well, we're just going to share his story and let's talk about your journey. So, 2010, you get diagnosed with what type of cancer?
Melanoma, which is skin cancer.
Okay. And then 2012, it
It had metastasized to my stomach.
to your stomach, which is that good news?
No, I was diagnosed as terminal and stage 4 melanoma.
Which means they send you home to die?
Basically, the doctors gave me 3 months to live.
Okay. And get your paperwork in order?
Yeah, that was one of the things they mentioned.
Get your paperwork in order?
Correct.
This is the part where you went home and made sure that I was in the will
Yeah,
and was going to be taken care of.
it was the part that was the hardest, was telling your mom.
Okay. So, what do you want to share about that?
Well, I think my story is important to share because it's a story of not giving up. It's a story of belief, and it was a story of when you have cancer, you fight it. And your mom taught me to do a lot of that. When I was first diagnosed, they told me that there was really nothing they could do for me. As being someone who doesn't take no for an answer, we reached out to our many resources around America, and we got an appointment with the guru in my disease at Duke University within 5 to 6 days. We went up and saw him, and he came in with his entourage. Never examined me, looked at my films, and said that they were much worse than they told me in Miami, that my whole stomach was a tumor, and go home and die. Needless to say, we were upset. I that night got on the internet and I researched melanoma, and I came up with the NIH, the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I wrote an email at 10:30 at night to Dr. Rosenberg, who's the head of melanoma at NIH, and told him my story. 8 o'clock the next morning, I got an email back from him saying, my secretary is going to call you, come up and see me, we'll see if we could help. Which was amazing because I later learned that it takes 12 to 18 months to get an appointment. So we were on a plane 3 days later at NIH. And after 2 hours of working with the doctor's top resident, I said, excuse me, but nobody's asked me for my health insurance card. And he says, well, we don't charge anybody at NIH. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's free. I said, so you mean my tax dollars really do something? And he said, yeah, they do. We even pay people who need help to move here for their treatment. So he spent the whole day with us, and at the end of the day, he said, look, I'm really sorry. There's nothing we could do for you. It's in your gastro tract. And all I could tell you is if they do remove this tumor in your stomach, don't let them put you on these 2 new drugs that they have, because A, it's going to make you sicker than the disease, and ruin your quality of life, and B, how will they even know it's working if they can't see a tumor? Well, at that point, we had no hope. I had no hope. Your mom never gave up hope.
Mm-hmm.
And a month before my diagnosis, we had heard about this unbelievable community-wide trip from Miami to Israel for a 10-day mission. And Mom and I sat there and we heard about it, and she had never been to Israel. She was always wanted to go. And I looked at her, and it was prophetic, and I said to her, you know what, we should go because who knows what our health will be like in the future. So that was a Saturday. On Monday morning, I booked the trip. And 4 weeks later, I was diagnosed. And then between all of you kids and my mother and everyone else, they said, you know, you can't go away for 10 days. We only have a small amount of time left with you.
I believe I said, get the hell out of here.
I quite don't remember. You could have. It was a blur. Mom and I decided that if that was going to be our last vacation, that was going to be our last vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So we packed up and we came out to LA to see you and to see Enzo, our grandson. And it was, when we left, it was horrible because I never thought I'd see any of you again.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought we'd be in LA again. And
that was a really strong memory for me because I was holding Enzo in my arms and you guys were pulling out of the garage crying. And we all were crying.
All the way home.
And I remember just thinking to myself, well, you know, if I'm either going to be at your bedside at the last minute next time I see you, or that is the last time I'm going to see you and be back in Florida to bury you.
Right.
Yeah.
So we saw you 2 weeks before we left for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Enzo's second birthday. Mm-hmm. So it was very special.
Just celebrated his 5th.
That's right. Yeah. And what happened was I have a friend who sold me insurance 30 odd years ago and has been my insurance agent friend ever since. And he called me up and he said, did you straighten out your disability insurance? I forgot I had even bought disability insurance. And he said, look, your head's not into it, and it wasn't. He said, I have this lady who's been helping some of my clients, give her a call. Gave this lady a call, never met her in person, had 2 conversations with her, gave her my medical records by Dropbox. And
where are we now, though?
We are still before leaving for Israel.
Before. So you're having this conversation with your insurance salesman.
Right.
And you're sending documents over
to a consultant who helps with disability insurance coverage.
Okay.
And she's going to follow all the paperwork for me so I have some income.
I see.
And 2 days before we leave for Israel, she calls up and she says, can I ask you a personal question? I said, sure. Go ahead. My life's an open book. She says, well, you know, I gave money to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem last year. Would you mind if I made a phone call to see if there's someone there who could help you? And I said, look, here's my Israeli cell number. Call me. I'll go see anybody. What do I care? Never thinking that anything would happen.
Of course.
And Mom and I got on the plane, and we went with 714 people. There were over 400 people on our charter from Miami, 2 of whom were our very good friends, and she had been fighting metastatic breast cancer for 5 years. She's since passed away. So it was a very emotional trip from that standpoint. And we were in Israel 3 days. The doctor who found my cancer was on our trip with us. And as a matter of fact, he found the cancer. Mom and I did something we don't normally do. We went to a pre-trip meeting. And the next morning I had a test scheduled in the hospital. And the doctor shows up, takes one look at your mom, and immediately says, I saw you last night. Of course, you would recognize Mom, but not me.
Mom's hot.
And, you know, we had this bond, immediate bond. So we were friends. And that was the day that he found the cancer. And the pathology came back a week later. So everything was kind of coming together. So we're in Israel, and we're our third day, and the cell phone rings. And I answer it, and it's this lady from Miami. She says, "Stewart, I got you an appointment tomorrow with this doctor at Hadassah Hospital. Can you go?" And I said, "Sure." So I wrote down the name, and she gave me the phone number for the liaison. And that day was going to be Memorial Day in Israel. Memorial Day in Israel is not like Memorial Day in the States. You don't have barbecues. There's no big sales at the stores. Sirens go off, and the entire country stops for 2 minutes, 8 o'clock at night, and at 2 minutes, 12 o'clock noon. You could be in a car, you could be in a bus, you could be in the middle of the supermarket. Everybody stops and has 2 minutes of silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that morning we had gone to the Holocaust Memorial. And who was standing next to me but my doctor from Miami who found the cancer. And I didn't want to tell him. Mom and I discussed that. We didn't want to say, "Look, we're going to go see this other doctor." Not because we thought he'd feel bad, but because we didn't want to ruin his vacation. He was there with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to make him feel obligated to go with us. So we didn't tell him. And Mom and I told, the only person that knew was the guide we had and our rabbi on the bus. And we took a cab and went to the hospital. And when we walked in, we were met by the liaison from Hadassah. And he took us down to meet the doctor. And the doctor walked out. She shook out her hand. She said, "Hi, I'm Michal. It's not I'm Dr. Lodom, I'm not Professor Lodom." She used her first name.
Mm-hmm.
And then she took Mom and I to her office, and we started talking. And I told her my story. And she told us that for the last 12 years, she had been working on a protocol using immunotherapy and to treat end stage or final stage or stage 3 and stage 4 melanoma. And she was getting really good results. And I said, "What do you mean by immunotherapy?" And she said, well, she believes that the body needs to fight the cancer cells. Cancer cells are cells that have mutated. And if you rev up your immune system enough, it was her belief that you would not kill the good cells, but the cells that are revved up would seek out the cancer cells and destroy them. And she does this by matching tissue and taking your cells and multiplying them by billions, treating them, and then injecting it back into you.
So she takes your good cells, makes more of your cells outside of you,
Correct.
and just kind of shoots them back into you.
And in my case, it wasn't even my cells, because I didn't have my tumor removed in Israel. If you have your tumor removed there, they take your tumor and they take the cells from your tumor.
Mm-hmm.
Since my tumor was removed when we got back from Israel in the States,
Mm-hmm.
She had my doctor in the States type my tissue and send it to her, and she was able to match it over 99% from her tissue bank. And then she created the billions of cells to inject back into me after she treated them.
So she engineered them outside.
She engineered them outside, correct.
How big was your tumor?
My tumor was about the size in my stomach of about a golf ball.
About a golf ball.
Yeah,
It's ironic. You love to golf
I did.
so much.
I did.
Yes. You're dying. So you come across, well, at the time he was dying.
At the time.
Yes.
Thank
Now he's
you.
living. So you're in Israel, you come across your doctor who gave you her first name, which is very nice. What was it again?
Michal.
Mechach.
Michal.
Mechach.
Make it more
I'll
simple.
work on that.
Simple.
At the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem.
Correct.
And she looks at your medical record, she does like a brief examination of you.
I didn't have any medical records. I
No.
gave her my history.
You just gave her your history and she
Correct.
said,
That she would accept me into her program, go home, have the surgery,
uh-huh.
have the tumor removed. It'll take me about 2 months to recover and come back.
Okay.
So Mom and I left there with big smiles on our face because we had hope
Of course.
for the first time in a month and a half.
I could just like see her on the plane, like looking at you, going, "I told
Well, it wasn't. It was in the taxi on the way back from the hospital,
you."
actually.
Okay.
It was interesting because, as I told you, this was Memorial Day in Israel. And in Israel, when the day starts at sundown and ends at sundown, it's not midnight to midnight.
Right.
Well, when Memorial Day ends, Independence Day in Israel starts. So you go from a very solemn day to a very happy day with fireworks. And we went back to the hotel, we showered, we got dressed, and we were meeting our group at the Israel Museum. Our whole group had taken over the whole museum. And it was a special party and then the fireworks. And as part of that party and fireworks, there were speeches and singing. And one of the gentlemen who spoke was a guy by the name of Nathan Sharansky, who was a member of the Israeli parliament. In 1969, 70, 71, when I lived in New York as a teenager, I would go demonstrate in front of the Russian consulate at the UN for his freedom to be able to leave the Soviet Union and emigrate to Israel. He was what was called a refusenik. And here I was all these years later listening to him speak as a member of parliament in Israel. And then a woman sang a song called Jerusalem the Golden, and she had written that song in 1967, right after the Six-Day War. And the woman who recorded it in 1967 was singing it for us that night. And then the Israeli national anthem is called Hatikva, which means the hope. So it just like all came together for us that night. And we had a good rest of the trip. One thing, I mean, it's just things, little things happened. We were driving north one night, and it was late. We had been up since 7 o'clock in the morning. We met the president of Israel, our group, and done a bunch of other things during the day. And the guide got on the microphone
You met
and said,
the president of Israel?
yes,
Like Ben?
Shimon Peres.
Okay.
We had a private session with him, our group. And the guide got on the microphone and said, I'm sorry to wake you all up. I know you're tired. But I pointed out a lot of ancient sites in Israel, but I have not pointed out nothing to do with technology. And he said, you know, the world talks about boycotting Israeli products. Without Israeli products, your cell phone wouldn't work, you wouldn't have texting, your laptops wouldn't work. And he said, and there's a building coming up on the left. See, it says Given. He said, they have created the most amazing thing in that building. They have taken a little camera and put it in a capsule, and you swallow it, and it takes pictures going through your digestive system. Well, I had that pill swallow 3 weeks before. Nobody on that bus knew it.
Oh my God.
And that's how they were able to confirm my cancer and confirm it wasn't somewhere else in my
And
in
you
my
had
system.
that done in the United States?
In the United States
So wait,
before I went to
And a
Israel.
pill?
So Israel, they have taxis,
Yeah, we'll talk about those.
they have medicine, they have cameras, they have cable.
Put it to you this way. After the United States and China, Israel is the third most represented country on the stock exchanges. They have more patents than almost 95% of the rest of the world.
But Israel's all desert and
No.
it's like people with like
No.
rifles and they're like
Pyramids?
and they don't have don't they have pyramids in
No, that's
Israel
Egypt.
too?
That's
Oh,
Egypt.
that's Egypt.
Close enough.
Okay,
Tel
so-
Aviv is right now one of the hottest, or if not the hottest city on a beach in the world.
A beach with air conditioning in the hotel rooms?
Oh yeah,
I'm
we're
shocked.
talking about
I had no
multi-million-dollar
Israel
condos.
has hotels.
They have
Interesting.
hotels.
A lot of
They
people
do.
don't know that.
Why?
They have
Why?
everything.
Okay.
We'll even talk to you about a wonderful taxi experience and a
Okay.
friend we've made. So we come back to Miami, and I have surgery
To remove the golf ball.
to remove the golf ball, take out part of my stomach. It's called a partial gastrectomy. And the surgeon had told us I'd be in intensive care for about 3 days, in the hospital for about 4 more.
Yeah.
So figure a week. He does the surgery. I'm in intensive care, and I've got tubes coming in me, going out of me, and Mom, who never leaves my side, is told she's got to leave because she can't spend the night in
Right.
intensive care.
Right.
So she's going to sleep in the hallway, and I'm begging her, please, go home, get 7 hours sleep in our bed. Please do that. Well, about 5 o'clock in the morning, the nurse, who was amazing, she was a Russian, and she was an unbelievable nurse. You can't get any rest in the intensive care unit.
No.
The noise and the beeping and everything going off, there's no rest.
There's no.
And she comes in and she throws me a gown, and she puts down this little bucket, with a little washcloth. And I said, can I bathe? She said, you bathe, change? I said, good, then what can I do? She says, I'll put you in the chair. I bathed myself, I changed myself, I got in the chair. And about 6:30, the resident comes in and looks at my NG tube and says, you're gonna need that for a couple of days, and I'm on morphine. And I said, okay. And a half hour later, the surgeon comes in and says, would you like me to take that tube out of your nose? I said, yeah. So he took it out, and he said, would you like to go upstairs to a regular room today? I said, yeah. And he said, and if you have a bowel movement, I'll even let you go home tomorrow. I said, give me the food.
Yeah.
So I was out of intensive care in a regular room within 24 hours. And I was home within 52 hours of surgery, which was great. And 8 days after my surgery, the doctor discharged me. So I get on the computer and I send an email to Israel and say, I'm ready. When can I come?
But I'm sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Were they dismissing you to go home to die?
Well, I'm going to tell you about that.
Okay.
And one more question.
Sure.
How hard did you push that bowel movement? I mean, you wanted to go home, right?
Andy,
Did you sit, rock, and push?
when somebody tells you you're going to die, that's one thing. When you see it written on a piece of paper, diagnosis, and it says terminal, it hits home.
Okay.
Really
so
bad.
So you just poop your pants and go home.
You do what you got to do.
Okay.
So Mom gets there in the morning in intensive care, and the oncologist walks in. He's a wonderful guy, but he's got no bullets in his gun, and I know
Right,
that.
right.
There's nothing he could do for me.
Oncologist is
He's the cancer specialist.
cancer specialist. Okay.
And he says, well, now that we've got the tumor out, we have to treat you aggressively. And I said, okay, what are you going to do? He says, well, we're going to give you this new medication. I said, which is the one they warned me about at NIH not to take. It'll make me very, very sick. And Mom and I had decided that quality of life was much more important than quantity.
Of course.
So I said to him, let me ask you a question. They just took my tumor out. If I start the medication, how do you know if it's working? So he thought a minute and said, well, if you live, then I guess it's working. And he left. So I turned to your mother and I said, I know I'm on morphine, but did I hear what I just heard? And she said, yes, said, good, we're going to Israel.
Wow.
And as each doctor came in to see me, we told them. And they were very supportive. And then we told the oncologist. And at first he was a little hesitant because immunotherapy had been tried in the United States 15 years earlier and did not get good results. But when I told him about my doctor, who we knew through international conferences, and the results he was getting, he said, yes, you should go. I will do anything I can to help. And he's been unbelievable to this day. He's helped. So
so this oncologist
he's at Mount Sinai in Miami.
Okay. Good guy.
Great guy.
Okay.
Great guy. We've been fortunate that every doctor we've seen and every nurse has just been phenomenal.
Now, the doctors in the United States, because we go to the doctor and we believe that they are like well informed, they're up to date,
They know what they're talking about.
they know what they're talking about. How is it that here in the United States, where people come to this country to get the best treatment, to get the best of just about anything, are not aware of this existing abroad, or this science being practiced elsewhere? Or do you want to talk about that later?
No, I can talk about it now a little
Okay.
bit. Part of the problem is you have the FDA. And the FDA is the Federal Drug Administration, who has to approve any treatment protocol, medicine, vaccine or anything else. And it's a very rigorous, expensive process to get it approved. My philosophy is if somebody is terminal and has no other hope, and you've got a phase 1 or a phase 2 drug, and I'll explain what that is, why not just give it to the person and see what happens? What do you have to lose? But I'm not their mathematician, and for some reason it screws up statistically whether or not it's a good drug or a bad drug or whatever else. So other countries don't have as strict rules and regulations as the United States. And there are many things that the best care you get in the world is in America. But there's some things that, some specialty treatments that you get outside the country. You know, you talked about taxi cabs before. We had to live in Jerusalem for 99 days during my first round of treatment. And we used to take taxis to the hospital. And the taxis were dirty, they were small, but invariably the driver would say, either in English or in Hebrew, which I speak fairly well, "Why are you going to the hospital here?" And I would tell them the story. And they would all say, "But I thought America had the best medicine." And I said, "Well, not for everything." And before I get out of the cab, they'd ask me my Hebrew name, my mother's name, and they said, "We're going to pray for you." Every one of them. It was amazing.
What is your Hebrew name?
My Hebrew name is Shalom, which means peace.
Okay.
Really?
Yes.
I know
It
Shalom.
also means hello and goodbye.
Yeah.
So Mom and I were fortunate. Within 2 weeks of getting discharged from the surgery in Miami, we on Craigslist found this beautiful villa to rent overlooking the old city of Jerusalem, a few minutes from the nice new mall that was down there.
They have malls.
They have malls too, yeah. And
In Israel.
we had gotten flights.
Are you thinking about like back in the day, like the Egyptians when Pharaoh ruled?
No, you know, it's just that when I talk about Israel, especially since he's been on his experience, and my mom and him go and they have like all these great experiences and do all these awesome things, and I'm like, a lot of people, it seems to me, think that Israel is just like a war zone, desert, desolate place, and it's like this really, you know,
It's far from it. We feel
thriving, awesome, like, you know, Miami. It's got nightlife, it's got technology, it's got a lot of everything in this really tiny little place. I mean,
it's the size of Rhode Island.
size of Rhode Island.
Oh.
So if I'm playing stupid and I'm doing that well, you know. So when we left off, we were talking about you had gone on Craigslist and you had just gotten out of surgery 2 weeks early.
Right.
You recovered 2 weeks faster than they had anticipated.
Correct.
And now you're on Craigslist and you're looking for a place to stay because you're going to head back to Jerusalem for 99 days.
Correct.
So where are we in the time frame as far as from diagnosis to heading back?
We got to Jerusalem on July 7th of 2012.
For the 99-day trip.
For the 99-day trip, right.
And you were diagnosed on March
15th.
Okay, so March, April, May, June.
Less than 3 months.
Okay. Here we are. Let's
Here
move.
we are. So
you're browsing the internet, you're looking for a villa, and it's overlooking the mall.
we had trouble because every place we try to rent, we could stay 2 weeks. We had to move out for a week. We had to go back for 3 weeks. Nothing worked out. And then it was suggested, look at Craigslist. There's a lot of garbage, but there's some diamonds.
Right.
And on the 6th page, I found this villa in the oldest community outside of the old city called Yamin Moshe, which anybody's been to Jerusalem, that's where the windmill is. And it was available from the day before we needed to get there till the day after we were supposed to come home. So meant to be. We had a friend in Jerusalem. We asked her to please go over and look at it. She did. I wired the money, and we had a place to stay.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
So,
because most of my care was outpatient. I was all outpatient, and I only had to go to the hospital every 2 to 3 weeks. So most of the time during the days, your mom would take care of me, venture out for a little while. So I wanted to be someplace where she could walk, you know, and shop and do whatever she wanted to do. And the evenings when it cooled off, I normally went for a long walk with her if I was feeling well. Went out for dinners and things like that and spent time with friends and family members like your brother came to visit us for 3 weeks and stayed with us.
But you're dying, and you're not stuck in the hospital.
You're
You're
not-
not like getting chemotherapy. You're not. Your hair's not falling out.
Right.
You're going to the doctor, and you're outpatient, and you're dying. So what's going on inside the hospital walls?
Meaning what?
Well, I assume when someone is diagnosed with terminal cancer, that they are in the hospital ward. They are being put
To me, it's a whole different thing because my mom had stage
Go
4
ahead.
terminal, breast cancer, and it was a whole different thing than what I'm seeing right now, in front of my eyes. So I mean.
Because I'm expecting to hear the story where you're like in the bed and you're vomiting, your hair's falling out, and you're getting all types of treatment. You're saying that you're trying to stay in a neighborhood where you guys can do a little bit of shopping, and if you're feeling good, you're gonna go out to dinner.
Right.
So where's the technology at that?
Well, you do have side effects with immunotherapy.
Okay.
As the doctor explained it to me, by injecting billions of cells into my body, she's creating a civil war where these cells are attacking and killing the cancerous cells, the mutated cells. That's if you've ever fought the flu, it's 100 times like fighting the flu. So the fatigue level is tremendous.
Right.
There is some nausea involved that I've had and still have. And we'll talk about that. Some people get headaches. My voice at times has gotten very weak. There's all sorts of headaches. There's all sorts of different side effects. But nothing like people who get chemo or radiation or things like that. You don't lose your hair. You're not as ill as people that I had who are friends who've unfortunately suffered through chemo and radiation.
In the pills, I remember my mom, we had this huge table and it was just full of pills that she had to take certain days, certain hours, throughout the day. Is there anything that you're on?
No.
Really?
No, the only thing my maintenance program is, after my 99-day treatment protocol, I have scans every few months of my brain and my body to see if there's any metastasis. And I go back to Israel. We go back every 6 to 10 months for a booster, because the doctor programs in a memory into the cells that she injects. The memory allows the cells to work for up to 12 months to attack and to kill. So by giving me the boosters, it keeps this whole process going.
Right.
After I get the boosters, I go through a worse period, but every day is a blessing. I'm here. It's 37 months after I was diagnosed, and when I walk into the hospital cancer center, they look at me and they can't believe it in Miami.
I'm sure.
Because they didn't think I'd be alive. Mom and I made a deal with the oncologist nurse, and the deal was that for every year I'm alive, we give her a new purse. So she's been collecting and doing very, very well.
What is treatment for? What is the treatment scenario for you when you go to Jerusalem? Because I know you have to go there because you have to get your booster there.
Correct.
The way in my head, it's you just kind of pretty much walk in. She takes your temperature, takes your pulse, looks at your tongue, and then she gives you a shot, and you're pretty much.
Well, it's a little bit more than that.
So what are they doing?
We send her my medical records from the States, and we also take the scans with us. She goes over them with the radiologist at Hadassah. Part of the problem with metastatic melanoma is that even though they actually saw where my tumor was during a enteroscopy, and they marked it, when I had a PET scan, it didn't light up.
Right. It hides.
It hides. And there's no guarantee that just because the scan reads clean, that you don't have disease going on somewhere in your body.
Right.
So she does her exam. She looks at all my stuff, and then I get the immunotherapy vaccines.
How does that work? What is the immunotherapy vaccine?
Well, what she has done is as I said before, typed my cells,
Mm-hmm.
and she freezes them. And it's one of these. She took us into a lab once, and all I could describe it as, it's got these stainless steel vats with little bottles in them that's frozen. And a couple of hours before my treatment, they defrost some of it, do their hocus pocus, whatever they add to it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they create an injection for me.
And
that doesn't, I mean, as far as we know, it doesn't really exist here in the U.S. or it's not approved.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
It's
don't be
wait,
sorry.
but just right before, because I know you want to talk about this
Yeah.
a lot. I think what I want to ask is, how simple is or complex is the process when you're there? So assuming that she gets your records from the U.S. and everything is clear and you're feeling great and everything is like thumbs up on her part, and now you're there to get your treatment. What does treatment mean? Like, is she just like walk in and say, Stewart, everything's great, here's a shot?
I got 3 little vaccines,
And how long does it take to administer those vaccines?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And then, she pats you on the butt and you like walk out the door.
I don't even get a lollipop.
You don't get a lollipop. You go back to the hotel room. You have like
Get your life,
a couple days of nausea.
No, the first few days are normally okay. I start getting fatigue and everything else within the first couple of weeks.
Okay, but it's not like, like a bad, cheap tequila hangover. You're not laying on the side of the bed, throwing up all over the place. You're not sick to your stomach.
We've been back for boosters 4 times. Every time it's a little different. The reaction's a little different.
Of course,
Because my body's built up. I mean, last year, for example, we were supposed to go back, and I was feeling so lousy. We had a phone conference with her, and she said, "You know what? Let's put it off for a couple of months, because I'm afraid that if I overstimulate your immune system, I'll shut it down,
Right.
or I'll make you so incapacitated you won't function at all." So it's not. There's no rule book. It's really flying by the seat of her pants. And she goes based upon my symptoms and her concept of where I need to be.
Okay.
Now, my vaccine is individualized for me, which is expensive. I have to pay for it. It's not covered by insurance in this country.
Of course, no.
What she is working on now, and she is in a trial with the doctor at NIH that I saw, who was her mentor, because she was at NIH for 2 years, is an off-the-shelf immunotherapy vaccine that's in either phase 1 or phase 2 trials. In phase 1, everybody gets the vaccine. In phase 2, everybody gets the vaccine, but they change the dosage. In phase 3, it's a blind random where 50% of the people get the real medicine, 50% get a placebo.
And that's for here in the U.S., right?
That's in the U.S.
Because that is placebo trials.
That's phase 3.
Okay.
And when we asked the doctor in Israel about this initially, I said, why are you only in phase 2? And her response was, if I could save a life, I'm going to do it. I don't care about getting it FDA approved or not. I'm not giving anybody a sugar pill.
Yeah.
So, she was, we call her our angel.
So, just so you know, you could be sick, walk into your doctor, actually believe, is this correct? Actually believe that you're receiving something to treat your particular condition, and the doctor could possibly be giving you a false.
Well, no. Number one, if you're enrolled in a trial, you get a bunch of paperwork. They explain it all to you. So nobody's lied to or surprised. The doctor doesn't know if you're getting the real medicine or a placebo. It's all controlled.
Right.
Controlled.
So I can be in a trial, I can
Right.
participate in a trial and not be one of the lucky ones that is actually getting the
That's
medication.
correct.
Okay. I sign off on this.
Right.
Okay. And the doctor's not. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I guess.
People do it because they feel it's their only chance.
Okay. So people. Okay. That sucks.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'd want the extra day or two of life to
Of
spend
course.
with my family and all
Of
that.
course.
Yeah.
I know.
Anyway. So.
We should cut.
You're talking about Israel. And
Israel.
what it's like.
What's it like in Israel?
It's not a third world country. It's one of the most advanced technological companies in the world. There's a lot of tourism. There's a lot of technology. There's medical breakthroughs. Israel leads the world in. You talked about it being a desert. Well, it's not. It's green. And the reason it's green and the reason a lot of countries in Africa have food now is because of what's called Israeli drip technology, where they use the smallest amount of water possible, and yet they could turn a desert into lush farmland.
Amazing.
And it's over 100 countries in the world using that technology today, among other things.
I've never heard of that. I never knew.
Yeah, look it up.
I will.
There's a really good book called Startup Nation that explains a lot of why Israel is leading the world in certain things and why the technology is advanced. That pill I told you about that I swallowed, the technology from that pill grew out of the technology from a guided missile head, where you've seen the United States dropping bombs in Iraq, and you see the camera zoom in all the way to the time of explosion. So what an Israeli did is he basically took that formula and miniaturized the camera so much that he was able to put into a pill that you swallow.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, and sends back thousands of images, which are then compiled by a computer. You wear a computer around you when you swallow this pill. You wear it for 8 hours, and it captures the signal and all the photographs and just combines them all for the doctors to look at. And it's the only way you could see your whole digestive tract from top to bottom. So, we were fortunate. The cure for my disease or the treatment for my disease could have been anywhere in the world. It happened to have been in Jerusalem. We happened to have found it. And there were days when I felt pretty good during the 99 days we were there, that your mom and I looked at each other and we kind of forgot why we were there, because there was a certain tranquility about being there. There was a peacefulness, and I know people think it's dangerous. The streets of Jerusalem and of Israel are safer than most cities in the United States. We've been up on the border of the Golan Heights, which is the border with Syria, and you could see 12 miles in the distance where ISIS was fighting the Syrian army. And yet we were up there watching, and enjoying the beautiful landscape and topography. So Israel is not a scary place unless you allow it to be, and you get over that once you experience it. I got to tell you an interesting story.
Go ahead.
We hated these taxi cabs for the most part.
The dirty, smelly one.
The dirty, smelly one. So this villa we rented, they had a little magnet on the refrigerator, and it said, "Itzik, new Mercedes." So I called him, and I said, "Is this Itzik with the new Mercedes?" He says, "No, I have a Jaguar." I said, "You have a Jaguar? A taxi?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Is it clean?" He says, "Yes." So I said, "Can you pick us up?" He did, and he pulled up in this white, brand new Jaguar, which was immaculate. Your mother started smiling. Okay, and we had to go to see somebody outside Tel Aviv, so we spent the day with him. And about 30 minutes into the drive, your mother's sitting behind him. She says, "Do you know who you look like?" Because she could see his eyes through the mirror, the rearview mirror. And he says, "Yes, I know, Richard Gere," which he does look a little bit like Richard Gere. So wherever we had to go in Jerusalem for the rest of the summer in Israel, he drove us. We'd call him, we'd pay him, he drove us. And then he invited us to his oldest daughter's wedding. And we have now been to his oldest daughter's wedding. We've been to his second daughter's wedding during another visit. His grandson is like almost one of ours. He's got 2 on the way. They called us as soon as they found out they were pregnant. And we go to their home for dinners and barbecues, and we've made really good friends. There isn't a merchant in the Manila Mall who doesn't know your mother. When they come out, they hug her, they kiss her, because she's sweet to them. And this is when I was not feeling well. She would walk up and down this area every day, and she made friends. So it's been a very special place for us, and we don't mind going back. We kind of look forward to it, but it's been an interesting trip, and a lot of things have happened. My doctor, Michal Lodom, is just, she's a wonderful person, and Mom and I felt that we had to give back. So what we told her was that we would do anything we could to go ahead and raise money for her research, because research dollars are hard to come by. Yeah. And Hadassah, who's the women's organization that owns the hospital in Israel, Mom and I have met with the president of the international president of the organization, and we've spoken at various meetings around the country, helped to raise money, and part of which goes to my doctor's research, and part of it goes to the hospital. So it's been a great relationship as far as that's concerned. And as part of that, the hospital sent a film crew down to Miami to interview us. And they sent a film crew to Israel to interview the doctor. So there's a producer and a cameraman who come down to Miami. And they're Israeli. But the guy who is the producer is in his late 20s. And we're talking, and beforehand, he gets my background, and I tell him I'm from New York. He says, oh, my family's from New York. I said, really, where? So he tells me. I said, well, I used to live in another town. I said, what's your last name? So he tells me his last name. And I said, are you Hillel's son or his nephew? He says, I'm his nephew, why? So I called my mother up and said, Mom, go scan the first page of my Bar Mitzvah album and email it to me. And she did. And there was a picture, and I said, that's your uncle standing next to me. We were best friends, until he moved to Israel when he was 15. So I hadn't seen him in 40 some odd years. Mm-hmm. And now Mom and I, we go back, we go to Israel, we spend time with Hillel and his wife. We were invited to his daughter's wedding, which we couldn't attend. So it's been really interesting.
Mm. So you reconnected with someone from Manhattan?
From Queens, yeah.
From Queens.
From New York.
In Israel.
Small world.
We've reconnected with a lot of people.
Mm.
It is a small world.
It is.
It's a very small world.
Where do you, I know you've been going on these speaking tours.
Right.
So where do you see there's a movement going on in the United States? It seems like every time I talk to you, there's like something new on 60 Minutes.
Right.
And what exactly are the speaking tours?
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with
basically,
that.
what we do is we go and speak to donors for Hadassah, and we tell them our story and try to help raise funds for the hospital and for the doctor's research.
Mm-hmm. What else are they doing there? Because I know
they're leading the world in number. Well, there are different institutes or hospitals in Israel that are doing different things. Mm-hmm. But Hadassah, for example, is doing incredible things with Lou Gehrig's disease. Mm-hmm. They're doing incredible things with Alzheimer's, with lupus, with cancer. So they have researchers who are, aside from their clinical responsibilities and their teaching responsibilities, also have research responsibilities. That's part of what they do. Right. And it's interesting, you go to a doctor's office in the United States or a lawyer's office, and the wall's full of diplomas and where they graduated from and their degrees. No doctor in Israel has anything on their wall because that's considered improper. My doctor trained at NIH, she trained at Stanford. I never knew that until I looked it up on the internet, because they're more people persons. I mean, she's, her staff comes in, they don't say Professor Lodom, they call her Michal. Right. It's a
personable level, not
yeah.
Better bedside manner.
Yeah, but as good a doctor she is, and we have a friend whose best friend is the chief nurse at the hospital. And I was told, and your mom was told, that my doctor is the one who teaches the doctors how to tell patients bad news. She's the one that delivers or tells the patients your loved one's dead or is dying or whatever else. So it kind of made us feel better because we know she's not afraid to say that.
Yes,
and she's never said that to us.
Mm.
At the same time, as tough as she is, we were there one day for a visit, and 2 of her sons were in the army on the border with Gaza. And there was 3 helicopters that landed outside of her office, one after another. And by the 3rd helicopter, she looked panicked, looked pale, and she said, "You have to excuse me for a second." And got on the internet and in the hospital and made a call, and she said, "Oh, there's no military action, it's just a car accident." And you saw the mother in her come out, and the doctor stepped back for a few minutes.
The human too.
The human side.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't see that in doctors and nurses.
Well, in Israel, when the soldiers come home for weekends, they're treated royally. Their moms do their laundry, they feed them. It's a different atmosphere. When soldiers are on the front, we knew someone whose son said, "Can you bring me dinner?" He's on the front in Gaza. And his father said, "Sure." He goes into a restaurant, and he says, "Can you pack up some food for my son?" And the guy says, "Where's your son?" He says, "Well, how many guys are in his unit?" They said 60. So the restaurant packed up 60 meals, wouldn't charge her, and sent it down there.
Amazing.
And that's just the way the country runs.
I feel like our country is desensitized to the sick. Like whenever I was in the hospital with my mom, there was a few nurses that would be human. They would feel, they would, try to be there and serve and tend. But lots of doctors and other nurses that came in, it was just a routine. It was just another person. To them, the person wasn't a person, it was a thing. And that's what really irritated me about our system, is like people are desensitized to like people's pain, people's discomfort, people's suffering. It's just like, oh, it's just another one. It's just another one. It's just another one. Give him this, give him this, give him this. Just giving them medicine to numb him or to shut him up. And that is what, that's what I have seen. And I hope that a lot of people haven't seen that, but that's what I have seen in hospitals that drives me crazy here. It's just nurses and doctors, they just come in, they do their job, but there's no sensitivity. There's no human connection, It's just very raw.
It always seems to me that the doctors here, sometimes they are regurgitating information that was fed to them by...
I don't like to generalize about anybody.
Of course not.
And I think
it's a personal
most
experience.
Doctors and most nurses
and I would hope.
are excellent. But, there's good and bad in every profession and in every business.
Of course.
Let me ask, it seems like doctors, now with Google, we all turn to Google to try to find information, and then we self-diagnose, and I know this is making doctors crazy because, I read things.
I asked the doctor that question
and what they say.
It was interesting. He says, "It's funny you asked," because I said, "Let me ask you a question. Does it bother you that patients come in there having Googled what you're telling them or what you told them and what you're going to do to them?" He said, "It used to bother me at first." He said, "But now I like it better because they're informed."
Right.
But I know a lot of doctors who don't because they feel challenged.
Right.
I think if a doctor is comfortable in his skin or her skin, if they're comfortable with their diagnosis, they don't mind an educated consumer.
Right.
And we are consumers as patients. And if we remember that, and we remember that we've got rights, I can't tell you how many times your mom has stood up and said to a nurse, "I'd like to see the medicine you're going to give him." And when I was treated here, or check things to make sure that they were right, and at times they weren't.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you need an advocate. You need somebody there to advocate for you when you're a patient.
Of course. We did that. We did that in the hospital a lot. Confirm okay, nothing's getting better. Give it time, give it time, give it time, give it time. And it's okay, man, critical pain, suffering, nothing's happening. What next? You have to force him sometimes. It's get to the next step because we're this isn't working. this isn't working, something's wrong. And like, oh, okay, I guess we'll examine her again. And they find out the tumors aren't shrinking. I mean, come on.
Well, I guess at some point, no matter what, there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think that's true. But what we have found, for example, at Mount Sinai is the oncologist is not working just himself. He's got a team. And as part of their team, there's someone who's responsible for pain management to make sure that people aren't suffering needlessly.
Right.
He's got an oncological psychologist who is amazing, because when I was diagnosed as being terminal, I have to tell you, I didn't plan more than a couple of days in advance. And for the first year, your mother had hope from the beginning. I wouldn't allow myself to go there. And, I started planning a week in advance, and then 2 weeks in advance, and 3 weeks in advance. And now, 3 years later, I'm maybe a month and a half, 2 months in advance. But having someone to talk to that has dealt with thousands of patients who are diagnosed as terminal is very helpful. And it's helpful for both of us, because the caregiver, in this case your mom, she's gotten a lot of ways worse than I do. When I'm in surgery, I'm sleeping, she's in the waiting room. When I'm sleeping because I'm fatigued, she's worried about taking care of me and feeding me and making sure I'm okay. So it takes a team like what you did with your mom.
Where'd it go?
One of the first meetings we had with the oncological psychologist, I said something and she corrected me. She said, from the day you're diagnosed, you are a cancer survivor, which made me pause and think, and that's true. Because the day you're told you have cancer, which is probably the worst 6-letter word you could hear, is it's a day where you start to fight for survival or prepare yourself for the road ahead. And it's an important thing to understand. Cancer affects not only the patient, but the family, the friends. And I don't think there's anybody whose life has not been touched by a loved one or a dear friend who's suffered from cancer, whether they've survived a day, a week, a year, or 10 years, or lost their battle at some point. It's a horrible disease, and we've got to fight it, and we've got to beat it. And the more I read, and I read a lot, as much as I can about cancer, immunotherapy seems to be the wave of the future. Not poisoning the body with chemotherapy, not using as much radiation, but allowing the body to heal itself. I read recently where they're injecting some patients, their tumors with the herpes virus or with polio. And the reason they're doing that is because when the immune system realizes that there is something wrong in the system, like the herpes virus or polio, it will attack only those cells. So there's a lot of variations on what Dr. Lodem is doing and has been doing. And I think more and more institutions in this country and around the world are moving towards immunotherapy. It's a healthier treatment for the patient. Your quality of life is better. Your survivability seems to be better. I mean, I've survived 37 months. There's no guarantee I'll survive, for any amount of time. But it's every day is a blessing, and every day has been a great day. And I've got to walk a son down the aisle to his wedding. We've gotten to see the birth of a grandson. We've celebrated 3 birthdays with 3 other grandsons. It's all, I've seen a son graduate from law school. It's all really special. And I wouldn't, I never thought in my life I would learn to appreciate people in life as much as I have. And it's a blessing that we've been given in a way. And we try to help other people. We get calls all the time from people who've got cancer and asking if there's anything we could do or point them in the right direction to get help, and we do. We've consoled people. We've tried to educate people.
And what is the right direction? Because we'll put it on a bubble.
Well, if anybody's got a question, for example, about melanoma, they could contact you, and you could get it to me, and I'll, I'm pretty available, except for when I'm getting treated, and we're going back to Israel on April 29th for another round of treatment.
fit@RebeccaVanetta.com. Okay.
I just want to say that you are like a walking like hope for people. You've been through so much, and I feel like in my personal experience of my belief that God is just he's blessed your life, and he's like empowering like this amazing he's giving you this blessing to be a light and hope to people that are suffering, and people that don't know that they can get help somewhere else, people that don't know that there's more than just the answer of no, you're gonna die, no this. It's like, yes, there could be possibility. And I just thank you so much for sharing your experience, and it means a lot.
And I also hear that people should be pissed because they're being restricted information and being kept in the dark. Is that fair to say? About like
It's
possibilities and things that are out there.
It's fair to say for the people like in my situation, I've lost, like I told you earlier, my mother to breast cancer, and I'm angry because I feel and I know in my heart that there's a cure somewhere, and I know it's out there, and I know that the FDA, it takes time to approve things, or it's about money, and it's about power, and it's about the drug association. Patients are on pills and pills and pills, and it costs, and they get so much money from it. It makes me angry that it comes down to money and power, that people have to suffer and people have to die, and
Or stay alive for a long time.
in pain.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you think?
I think quality of life is the most important thing.
Definitely.
I hear what you're saying, Rebecca. We had a friend who, as I told you, passed away from breast cancer. Her medical bill every month, according to her husband, was about $32,000.
Yep.
For years and years. There's a lot of money, unfortunately, to be made producing cancer medication, treating cancer patients, infusing it.
Yes.
So something's got to happen to change the way things work a little bit.
Yeah. And you're allowing people to now know that there's more, and that we can entrust in knowing that there is good out there.
Yeah,
there are people that want to help.
And the internet is helping because anybody could Google, and if you read carefully, you could find some answers, or you could find some alternatives.
And,
or at least start questioning that. Even
the keywords that will end up on our YouTube channel for this specific subject, somebody will be able to go on Google and type in Hadassah or your type of
Dr.
cancer.
Lodum or
Dr. Lodum.
Stage 4 melanoma, immunotherapy
and we
treatment.
may pop up.
Correct.
If we can get anyone other than Mom to watch.
So make sure to reach out to fit@RebeccaVanetta.com if you have any questions, or if you want to talk to Stewart himself.
Through us. I have one more question.
Sure.
If you could have this magic wand, and besides cure yourself, but just where would be the first area of change that you would like to, what do you see would be, I don't know, is it the bureaucracy, the paperwork, is it the red tape, what would you say, let's get this out of the way so we can start moving forward?
I wouldn't look to cure myself first. It breaks my heart to see children with cancer.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day Mom and I were walking out of the oncologist's examining room, and a woman in her 9th month was walking in after me. who was stage 3 or stage 4. And to see the young kids in the pediatric oncology units, the kids that you read about on the internet, the kids that don't make it, that's what I think we need to focus on. I'm lucky I've lived. I've had children and grandchildren. Yeah, life could be too short, but I'd like these young kids to have a chance.
Of course.
Okay. The name of the hospital is?
Hadassah Medical Center.
Hadassah, how do you spell that?
Hadassah.
Medical Center
We'll write it
in
down too.
Israel.
In Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. And your doctor is?
Dr. Michal, Michal Lotem, Lotem. She's in head of melanoma at the hospital.
And she's doing some speaking engagements here in the U.S.?
Well, she's here lecturing once in a while. She's also involved in some trials. Now with her mentor at NIH, the guy that turned me down, they're using a sort of immunotherapy. And I say, when you go see Dr. Rosenberg, you remind him that he told me to go home, or his protege told me to go home and die,
Amazing.
and you've saved my life.
Amazing.
So that institution and a few others in this country are using some immunotherapy treatment that's similar to mine.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll get good results.
Yeah.
So you believe that at some point there will be a cure for cancer?
I believe.
I don't know if I could say cure. I think that we could certainly stop the progression or slow the progression and eventually cure it. Yeah.
Okay.
And you got to believe that when you're a cancer survivor.
Yeah. It's good for me because...
Also, your mother would kill me if I did.
I believe it. I believe it with my whole heart.